Hey guys, what's going on? It's Shane here. Today I want to do a little video about soldering. I decided to kind of do some like Airsoft 101 type things, kind of start at the beginning, the real basic stuff, and then work my way into the more advanced things. That way I'll have a good playlist for anybody that's brand new to the sport. I'll start off by saying that I am not a professional electronic soldering person. At all. You know, if anything I'm doing, if some soldering guru is like, hey, that's dumb, don't do that, hey, throw it in the comments, man, because I'm always looking to learn. I know enough to solder a connector on a battery and a gun and to fix a few things here and there. So let's dig in. First, I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I have. So starting off, wire strippers, here I'll put them here. So wire strippers, these things are awesome. It has all the different gauges in there, and I'll show you how to use them. But super cheap. You can pick them up Harbor Freight. I'll put a link in Amazon with them. This is fine solder wire. It's 1.8% flux. That's the stuff that burns and it causes the solder to spread out into it, like giving it a path. One thing I do want to point out about soldering is that solder does have lead in it, and when you burn it, the fumes are toxic. So you need to make sure you're in a well ventilated area. So we got T plugs. Went ahead and grabbed some of these, a bag of them. People call them Dean's plugs, but actually Dean's is a brand name. Kind of like when you're talking about Velcro, right? Everybody says, hey, is there Velcro on that? So Velcro is actually a brand name. The actual item. The item is hook and loop tape, right? So hook and loop tape is actually what Velcro is. These are way better than the small Tamiya connectors that you generally see. The electricity moves through the connectors better, causing less resistance. Okay, I think it's pretty negligible personally. What I hate is the Tamiya connectors, for some reason, the way they are, it seems like you try to plug them in, you got to get this angle like perfect to get it to seat, right? And they're really big. I mean, things are like that big. Now, this crazy spider thing that I got before me right here, this little Dr. Octopus looking thing, this is actually what they call helping hands. This one's all kinds of crazy, but it was super cheap on Amazon, so I went ahead and picked it up. And what it does is it allows you to clamp things into it while you're working, so you can have both hands free to work with the soldering and the soldering iron. So you're going to need a pair of snips and then rosin flux, right? So flux, like I was saying, there's actually flux built into this solder, but if you take some of this paste and put it somewhere that you're going to solder onto it, it helps heat up the surfaces and has the solder spread into it. It just makes soldering 100 times easier. And then I have my soldering iron. So this one is a little bit of a, this is kind of a more advanced soldering iron. My wife got it for me for Christmas. It's the Extronics 3020. What's nice about this one, as you can see, is whenever I turn it on, I can select my temperature, so I can go as high as I want to. I'm going to put this at about 700, and on it includes this sponge right here, which I'm gonna wet real quick. It's right here is like a metal shred, and it's got a cleaner at the bottom of it, so you can poke your soldering iron into it. So I'm gonna get my octopus back over here, my Doc Ock as I call it. Kind of a nerd, I know. It's even got like a magnifying glass and a light and stuff. It's a little much, but it works. Here's your male and female connector right there. As you can see, it's a T. It looks like a T. That's why they call it a T plug, like that. Okay, so these T plugs fit together nicely. So there's a positive symbol and a negative symbol etched in there. You probably can't see it very well, but that's how you know. So what we have here is a battery Tamiya connector. So that is a female side. So we will make sure you put the right side on the right connector, or else you're just gonna have to redo it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this male side, which would go on the replica itself, and I'm just going to set it to the side. I'm going to start clipping wires here, but I'm only going to clip one at a time, because once you clip these wires, as soon as you press these two together, it's going to overheat this battery instantly, because what it's going to do, right now the circuit's not completed because there's two different prongs in here. But the moment that you touch those wires together, it completes the circuit, and all the juice starts frying it, and these things will explode. It's pretty bad. I've had a LiPo explode on me. This is a NiCad, but yeah, you don't want that. So go ahead and clip the wire. It's clipped. Grab your wire stripper here. So this is 16 gauge wire, so down here you can see all these numbers and the little holes. So I'm just going to go to the 16. I'm going to put it in there. Give myself about half an inch-ish, and then you press down and just pull, and see it pulled that extra piece of insulation right off. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to twist it. I'm going to take some of this rosin flux that we talked about. So it's kind of a goo. I'm just going to plunge that wire in there, and what that's going to do is put just enough on there so that the solder will flow onto it. And I'm going to start loading. I'm going to start loading the soldering iron, right? So you can see these fumes. That's mostly rosin burning off, but so after I have a healthy little bead of solder on there, all I'm going to do is touch that wire, And what's going to happen is that you're going to heat that wire up and that solder is going to transfer over. So the red is positive. I'm going to see my little plus sign here. So I'm going to put this in my other helping hand. You can kind of see how this becomes handy. Now we need heat shrink. A tube of heat shrink, it's got like every single size you can think of, and there's a little razor blade in there. So this is the size that works with 16 gauge wires. This little tube here will make about 3. Do not use black tape. Don't do it. Black tape is honestly like the worst invention of mankind because everybody uses it for anything electronic, and it's like such a like temporary repair. It's not even funny, right? And you just slip it right over and then put it at the very bottom. When you get heat on this, it will shrink. So when you take a lighter and do it, or you get a heat gun, this stuff will shrink up, and it keeps it up on there. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to throw a little bit of that rosin on there. I'm going to go ahead and load up this terminal. So I'm going to get a nice bead of solder on this thing. That way, all I got to do is make sure that maintains a liquid state, and then I'm going to put the wire on it, and once it heats up, it will join together. And once it joins together, it is soldered. I'm going to let it cool. You want to keep it while it's cooling. You want to keep it exactly where it is until you give it a few seconds to cool. So now we're soldered on. Definitely not the best soldering job I've done, but by far not the worst. Alright, so after it cools down for a second, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can let this completely cool and then put this on, or you can shove it on real fast and let the heat kind of shrink it down. So I'm going to shove it on real fast and make sure you get it all the way up, and as you can see, a little bit, it's starting to shrink up there on the end, right? So there's a few different ways you can do this. You can grab a lighter. This soldering iron's 700 degrees, so if I just hold it right here under and just let the heat come up, it'll start shrinking it. So it shrunk up a little bit, and then I'll finish that up. Okay, so now we're not at risk of blowing a battery up. Pull it off. Go ahead and twist our wire up here. We're going to make sure black, negative, perfect. Alright, so don't forget, and you will forget if you start soldering, to put these things on. I forget, I still forget all the time. Flux rosin there, just give it a little dip. If I tinted the first wire, I'm not going to tint this one and see which way works out better. It's good to have a clean tip. It makes the solder flow easier and melts easier. So I'm going to go ahead and touch this post and start kind of warming it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and get a nice fat blob of solder on this terminal here. Okay, I'm going to take this wire, which was untinted this time, and I'm literally just going to stick it and then wrap the solder over the top. But you want to give it just a second to make sure it's warm. Oh, yep, it's good, and we're going to shove this thing on real quick. Same thing, it's going to start shrinking it down. Now you got a battery with Dean's connectors. I recommend a heat gun. I have a heat gun, it's just I'm running out of plug-ins over here. You can take this old Tamiya and get rid of it, right? Alright, so I want to go over a few things. First of all, heat shrink, very important. But you can use this stuff for all kinds of things. Anything you need to insulate or you need to shrink something around it, right here. Like I said, there is lead in solder, so there is leadless solder that you can buy. It's a little bit stiffer and harder to work with. Just make sure if you are soldering, be in a well-ventilated area, and then don't just sit there and inhale what's going on, right? The only thing you need to do now is just take your replica and do the exact same thing. If you have noticed, a lot of the higher-end replicas are going to Dean's plugs, and there's always people I see posts all the time on Facebook, and they're like, oh, this has this type of connector, and my battery has this. Soldering's a good skill. It's good to know how to do. So consider this the very first of the actual teching series. And hey, thanks for stopping by my channel. And I always forget, like, subscribe, share my videos, you know, all that stuff. I hate plugging that. It really does help the channel out, and it's growing pretty fast, and it's pretty exciting. So anyways, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.